This is Mariam here. I am the owner of this page and I am a life coach for Muslim women who want to heal themselves, talk to you about 5 things that I wish someone had told me before I got divorced. And I know there will be some of you who are in this situation and maybe you're struggling and one of the biggest reasons why women actually start their healing journey is when they're having problems in relationships or when they actually get divorced. So for me that was true. My spiritual healing journey started like in a more deeper way and in a more profound way when I did get divorced, and I was totally broken, like smashed and broken. I can't tell you how like desperate I was for help and how I felt like I didn't have anyone to turn to. And that is when like I realized, like it hit me so hard that I realized that I need to do something for myself and I need to change something for myself. And that's why I'm here. I'm making this video because I remember when I was going through like my relationship, but before I got divorced, I was having such a hard time and I was really struggling like to understand what was going on, to understand myself, to just to understand. I did not know anything. Like I didn't understand my emotions. I didn't understand my thinking. I was going round in circles and I was struggling and I didn't know what was going on. And I'm sure there's other sisters out there who feel like that or who are in that situation. And looking back, like I remember I was trying to find help. Like I was contacting different sisters who I could see online, and I wasn't really in the online space that much, and I wasn't that active on Facebook or anything, so I wasn't familiar with that many coaches. But like I did a Google search and I found a few people, like a few Muslim sisters, and I tried to get in touch with them, and I couldn't get any help, and it was really bad. And in the end, I ended up with a divorce. But alhamdulillah. But anyway, so that's why I'm going to share these 5 things that I wish someone had told me before I got divorced because they're big things and they can really change the situation. They can change the way, even if you do end up getting divorced, knowing these 5 things can completely change the way it happens. It can make it less traumatic. It can make it more of a insightful experience for you. And it's never going to be a pleasant experience, but it could be a bit calmer, a bit more peaceful, and less emotionally traumatic. So that's why I'm sharing these 5 things. And I wish that someone had told me these 5 things before I got divorced, and I wish I could have found someone who could have supported me at that time. So, and I'll come to the end of this video, I'll share with you like a promise that I made to myself afterwards, after I had got divorced and I started my spiritual healing journey. That's when I made a promise to myself. So first, without going on any further, the first thing that I want to share with you, if you are in a difficult relationship or if you're having a lot of problems in your marriage, the first thing that I wish that someone had told me was that there is no perfect relationship, and it's actually perfectly it's perfectly normal. Like it's like having an imperfect relationship, an imperfect marriage, and having problems in your marriage is actually perfectly normal. Like it's completely normal. And I know sometimes it can get really bad and you might be sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, what's going on, and this doesn't happen to other people and I don't understand. And that probably means that you need to do some work, but it doesn't mean that you're that's the end of your marriage, or it's the worst disaster that could happen, and all these extra meanings. Like I remember sitting there by myself and thinking like, oh, you know, this is the worst situation that could happen to me, and like this means I'm a bad wife, this means like I don't know how to be a wife, this means like I'm not good at marriage, and all these meanings that I was adding to my situation, not realizing that actually marriage in itself is something that is a challenge and something that you have to keep working through and working on to in order to maintain, and that no one has a perfect relationship. And that doesn't mean, I'm not making you a promise that, you know, your marriage isn't going to end in divorce or that it is going to end in divorce. I'm just like, you know, if you've got that feeling of this is the worst thing that could happen and how could this happen to me and no one else is like this, I just want you to know that there is no perfect relationship, and everybody who's married has got some challenges or has some problems that they're trying to overcome and work through. And the best marriages are the ones that have overcome challenges and worked through them. So that's just the first thing that I really wish someone had told me, because it would have saved me from giving myself a lot of grief about feeling like a really bad person and a really bad wife. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing that I wanted to share, which I really wish that someone had told me at that time, was that there is no rush to decide whether you want to end your marriage or to continue with your marriage. Like I remember at one point I needed, like, you know, I just needed a bit of separation, and because I had that separation, I kept thinking I was such a bad person and I was such a bad wife. And, you know, generally in, like, I don't know, in my community or generally in the community, people will tell you, like, you know, wives need to be like this and women need to be like this and women need to be like that. And because of all that, I kept feeling like I was the worst wife ever, just because I was having a bit of separation. And because I was having that separation, I kept thinking, okay, if I'm going to do this, then I should just end my marriage, because I'm giving my husband a lot of agony and making him suffer. And I was like, you know, I had put this extra pressure on myself to make a decision about whether I wanted to continue with the marriage or not to continue with the marriage. And like, and I looking back, I know that I wasn't really ready to make that decision. I hadn't like really, you know, integrated it into myself and really thought about it and really, like, you know, come from a grounded place when I made the decision. But I was putting so much pressure on myself to make that decision. I was in, like, you know, I was rushing myself and putting so much pressure to decide, like, are you going to stay in this marriage or are you not? Are you going to stay or are you not? And I just want you to know, and I wish someone had told me at that time, that there is no rush. And, you know, looking back, it might feel like that now when you're in that situation, you're in that relationship and you're thinking, shall I get divorced, or I need to make a decision, I need to make a decision. But when you've gone past it, and eventually, like after a few years, you know, waiting another 6 months, like if you had got divorced 6 months later, it wouldn't have made any difference, and it's not going to make any difference whatsoever. So like if you think about it, 20 years down, like, you know, in 20 years time, you're not going to look back and think, oh, you know, damn, I wish I had ended it sooner, like 1 month sooner or 2 months later. And in fact, you're probably going to be happy that, you know, like you lasted a bit longer and at least allowed yourself that time to be sure of your decision. So that's the second thing I just want to say, that I wish someone had told me, was that don't put pressure on yourself to make a decision and don't rush the decision. Allow yourself to, like, you know, really be guided by your inner self and to have clarity in your thoughts, clarity in your decision, clarity in your emotions, and to really be guided by, you know, spiritually by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before you make that decision. So don't put any pressure on yourself to make that decision any quicker than you need to. And I always say to my clients, the longer the better. Like, the longer you leave it, the better, because it gives you a chance to, you know, make peace with yourself and make peace with the situation. Farhana's watching. Assalamu alaikum, Farhana. Nice to see you here. Okay, I'm just... okay, so the next thing, the third thing that I really wish someone had told me before I got divorced is that, you know, there's no... when you're going through, like, you know, a difficult bit part of your relationship, and you're having that, when you're at that point where you're, like, you know, actually considering divorce, or you're having a really bad time, all sorts of feelings will come up for you. Like, you know, you might wish like you could undo the marriage, or you might wish that, you know, you could be with someone else, or, you know, like, and you'll remember random people, and you'll have so many feelings going on. You might hate the other person, you might hate yourself, you might hate people who are involved, you might have a lot of anger, and like, you know, there'll be a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions that are coming up. And what I wish that someone had told me was that there's no shame in that. There's no shame in what you feel. There's no shame in how you feel about everything that's going on. There's no shame in the emotions that you're having. And actually, when you release that shame, when you let go of it and just accept your feelings for what they are, that is what's going to give you the most clarity about your situation. Okay? So I really wish that someone had told me that, because like, I know at that time I was feeling so much shame for, like, you know, some of the feelings I was having, for some of the thoughts that were going through my mind, and I was really thinking like, oh, I'm a really bad person and I'm so evil for feeling like this, for thinking like this, and that really stopped me from actually having any clarity. So that's the third thing. So let go of the shame around how you feel, and just allow your feelings to be what they are. It doesn't mean you need to act in a wrong way or do anything sinful, but it just means that allow your feelings to be what they are without adding shame to them, inshallah. Okay? And then the fourth thing that I wanted to share, which I really wish someone had told me, is that the best way, literally, oh my god, this is like huge. This is like, if I was going to tell you one thing, it would be this. Like, the best way to work on your marriage is to work on yourself. Like, we're so often, you know, we get pulled into like what the other person's not doing, what they need to change about themselves, and how they're not doing their part, and how I've tried this, and, you know, like, it's their fault and they're the one. But none of that is going to change anything. The only thing that you can work on, and that's not even in your control, you know, like how the other person behaves, that's in their control. And if you think about it, that's like, you know, part of what the destiny that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for you. So the only thing that you can actually do is work on yourself. And that's the one thing and the best thing that you can do to, and it's a win-win situation no matter what. Like, you know, that's the, if there was any chance of your marriage turning around, then I assure you that the only way you can turn it around is by working on yourself. And on the other hand, let's say you really work on yourself and you get to a point where you actually decide, you know, this, like, you know, you've done all the work on yourself and you've got that clarity and it's still not working for you, then you're going to, you know, make that decision to end your marriage or to go through that with that divorce with such peace of mind, with such clarity, with such, like, you know, reassurance and such connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's so important to work on your spiritual connection, work on your emotions, work on your mind, you know, really work on healing yourself, doing the work that you need to do, because when you do that, you're going to win either way. Either your marriage is going to transform because of the way you've changed, or number two, it's not going to transform, but you're going to be so transformed, so empowered, so much of a better person than you've ever been, that you're, you know, like, when you make that decision, even if you do end your marriage, you're going to be so much at peace with it. You're not, there will be some emotional pain, but it won't be to the level that you would have if you had not worked on yourself. Like, that was me. I made that decision when I was a mess. I didn't know anything about myself. I didn't understand myself. I hadn't done any work on myself. Not because I didn't want to. I was trying to find people, but I couldn't find anyone. And that's where I ended up making that decision. And then later I had to do the work afterwards. And there was a lot of emotional trauma that I had to work through. So save yourself that. And inshallah, if you're at that point where you still are in your marriage and are contemplating divorce, then work on yourself now. Now is the time, inshallah. Okay? And then point 5, which is, so number 5, which is related to number 4 actually, but this is a really big one as well, and it's about who you get help from. So this is something I really wish, I don't know if I wish someone had told me or if I wish it had been more available at the time, is that I did get some help at one point, but it ended up being from a non-Muslim lady. And I'm not saying, like, you know, I'm not saying that, oh, non-Muslims are wrong or that they can't help sometimes. But for me, because I have, like, you know, I'm really spiritual, I have a really deep connection, like, with Islam, and I really, like, you know, want to stay within the moral compass of, like, Islam, and make sure that all my, like, decisions are based on my Islamic values and all of that. Because because I had contacted so many sisters and never had a response, I ended up working with a lady who was not Muslim, and how that the way it affected me was that later I regretted a lot of the things, like some of the concepts she had taught me, or a lot of the ways that she had affected my thinking. And later I had wished that, you know, I just wish someone had been available at that time, because it wasn't for want of trying. I had contacted a lot of people, but I didn't get anywhere. And eventually I just ended up in this situation where I ended up getting help from someone who wasn't Muslim, and it really affected me. So when you're looking for help, when you're looking for support, like, I really recommend that you do get a coach, especially if you're going through this situation. Like, it's so, you know, you don't know how life-changing it is working with a coach that understands you, who's spiritually connected, who's got those Islamic values that you have, and who can really guide you. I did that after I got divorced. I started my coaching journey with a sister, and it was transformational for me, but I really wish I had had that support beforehand. So I really want to, like, that's the fifth thing, like, if you do get help, then make sure it's from someone who's going to align with your values, like spiritually, Islamically, morally, emotionally, because otherwise you're going to get support that's going to take you off, like, away from who you are and away from how you do things, and you're going to end up regretting it later. And that brings me to the last thing which I said I'm going to share today, which is the promise that I made to myself about, you know, what when I started my healing journey after I got divorced and I started working on myself. I made a promise that, you know, I'm going to be there for sisters who are in that situation, and I'm going to be, like, you know, I'm going to offer this service to them. Like, I'm going to offer coaching to them from a spiritual and Islamic perspective, because I know when I was there in that position, I was looking and contacting people, but I didn't get anywhere. And I made a promise to myself that when I get through this, I'm going to be that person who's going to offer this service, who's going to combine Islamic values, spiritual values, with psychology, with coaching, with self-development, and be there to support sisters who are, you know, who are ready to invest in themselves, who are ready to support themselves. Then I'm going to be available for that. And I'm going to make myself, like, you know, as obvious as possible for people to find me. Because that was the problem I had. Like, I even found people and I contacted them, but I never got through to them, or never got replies, or, you know, never heard anything back. And I was ready to invest. I was ready to pay whatever it took, because I really wanted to save this situation, and it didn't work for me. So I made this promise to myself that I was going to be that person. And I just want to say that I am, alhamdulillah, I have coached quite a few sisters through some difficult situations. It has been transformational for them. They've, you know, changed their lives around, become more empowered, felt better, and some you know, some of them have transformed their marriages. Some of them have, like, I've coached sisters who, after they've got divorced or lost a husband, and it's been amazing. And I'm here if you need help, and if you're feeling that need to, you know, get that support for yourself, so that you can make an aligned decision, so that you can be your best self. And at the end of the day, regardless of how your marriage is working out, regardless of how your relationship is working out, regardless of what your spouse is doing, we as women, we have to realize that you're answerable to Allah only for yourself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask you what your actions were, what deeds you did, how you behaved, what, you know, work did you do to improve yourself. That's the bit that we're answerable for. So it really isn't just an investment in this dunya, and in the relationship, it is an investment in the akhirah as well, because anything that we do to improve ourselves, we hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will recognize it, and Allah will reward it for us, inshallah, and that it will go far, it'll go far in terms of where we get to when we die. And that's it from me today. So that's the 5 things I wished someone had told me, and the one promise that I made to myself when I was there. And the promise included, like, I made a promise to remember how I felt. I made a promise that I was going to remember how I felt, and like, feel the pain of sisters who are there, and believe me, I feel it. So Jazakumullahu khairan, and if you want to get in touch, inshallah, for help, then please do. And I know how difficult it is, I know how heartbreaking it is, I know how sad it is, and I know how lonely you can sometimes feel when you're there. And I just want you to remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you, and no matter what you're going through, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has like special mercy saved for you. And even if it's hard to believe, just take a moment to feel that love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for you, and feel His mercy for you, and absorb it into your being, and let it maybe fix a tiny small crack in your broken heart, because that's the only thing that helps us heal. The reliance on Allah, the tawakkul on Allah, the trust and the knowing that Allah will always be there even if the people go away. That's the one thing that gets you through. And sometimes you just need that one person who believes in you, who's in your corner, who's fighting for you, guiding you, and that can be life-changing. Really can be life-changing. And that's it from me today. Before I get too emotional, but I hope you found it helpful, and do contact me and get in touch if you need more support, inshallah. And Jazakumullahu khairan, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sundus is saying, subhanallah, I was right now in somewhat same situation. I opened my phone and found you. May Allah ease your ways. Yeah, subhanallah, like that was me after I got divorced, and I was so desperate for help. I was like even worse state than I was before. And one day I suddenly, just like out of the blue, came across the coach that I eventually worked with, and it was so like, Allah, literally Allah sent her my way, and I was so grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that situation. Sometimes, like that little post that you see, or that person that Allah sends your way to, say something, or a quote that you read and that makes you feel better, or that changes something in your heart. And that's the mercy and the love of Allah that you need to recognize and see, that, oh, Allah, like, Allah sending you little subtle signs. He is the subtle one, the Latif, and He sends you little signs of His mercy and His love all the time. And sometimes He sends you big signs where He, like, literally answers your dua in a way that you had never imagined, and sends you that support that you need. So Jazakumullahu khairan, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. If you are interested in working with me, then just get in touch, inshallah, and I would love to support you on this journey. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.